Good Sunday afternoon, everybody. I'm Nino Evangelista, and welcome to the Hurricane Hub discussion for Sunday today, May 21st, 2023. Had to take the last few days off since I was a little burnt off from posting, a lot throughout the week last week, or this past week, I should say. But at least I'm back now, and we're here with a discussion to talk, because there is actually some things to go over today. First, though, as we always usually do on Saturday, but doing it today since I took yesterday off, the countdown till June 1st, the start of the season, only 11 days away. Really, honestly, it's kind of useless to now be counting down because there isn't really that much to count down anymore. We're basically here, time for the hurricane season. Tracking it as a thing in the future is kind of now passing. Now we're basically living it in the present. And with that being said, I did mention that there is actually something to talk about. Really quickly going to refresh it to see if anything did come up. Because I believe I think the new tropical weather bulletin did just come out. I think I see it down here. But bottom line, there's an area of interest, not invest yet, but there's an interest area in the Atlantic. And that is something to talk about. Indeed, it is a surface trough interacting with the upper level low, so really not anything tropical in nature. Tropical coming from tropical waves or maybe a Central American gyre. No, we're not really dealing with that right now. It's more or less upper level low, but still something to talk about. It is producing large area of disturbed weather, extending couple hundred miles northeast of the Bahamas, and upper level winds are expected to increase later today, so development is not really expected. That was the 8 p.m. update. Let me see if the 2 p.m. updated at all. And this is the 2 p.m. because they have not released a graphic yet. I don't think it's updated yet because the percentage is still 10-10 because they're not really expecting much development out of this. And if we take a look at the 7-day graphic, I was about to say 5-day, but just forgot. They now do 7-day graphics. You generally see how we're not really expecting a lot of development, of course, because the area of interest or the area of potential development is small. So really nothing to be concerned about it with this system. But of course, we'll still talk about it since it is something to go over, but nothing expected in the Eastern Pacific either in the next 2 or 7 days. So good on that front. Really quickly, want to talk about how things are going on across the globe. Tropical storm Fabian still a thing now, weakened from a very strong storm that it was a few days ago. So now it's a weaker storm. Now we have a typhoon in the Pacific. Finally, I was actually waiting when we would actually get a storm in the Pacific. And really quickly, I want to see how strong this thing gets. So now, quickly bring it up. It's called Typhoon. What's the name? The name was somewhere. Anyway, but it is expected to actually become a pretty intense system. It is a Category 1 strength storm right now, wind speeds to 70 knots, and it is expected to eventually strengthen, potentially, into a storm of Category 4 strength storm, which is 115 knots, or as we like to see it in the Atlantic Basin, roughly 130 miles an hour. So Pacific Basin expecting a strong storm there. We'll have to see if it threatens anywhere along the lines of the Philippines or anything like that. But that is not the concern for right now. We're talking about the system in the Atlantic, and right where it is, right here, is actually pretty good wind shear over it, 10 knots of wind shear, so pretty favorable. Probably why it's been developing right now. It's had a chance to kind of get going a little bit, but as the NHC does mention, there's stronger wind shear up ahead, so really no concern for development at this moment. And you can take a look at the 850 millibar vorticity too. Probably why they did mention it anyway. Actually does have some pretty good vorticity to it, so there's something there. It's just that conditions are probably not going to be that favorable in the long term for this to do anything, so this is really not much of a concern for potential development because really it doesn't look like the chance or the window for development will last all that long. But anyway, moving on from that, taking a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies as we usually do every Saturday when it comes to these longer updates. That's how it's probably going to be now. We have the shorter updates throughout the week, and then the long updates we still do every Saturday. Starting off at May 20th, that's yesterday, but as I went over before, the NOAA Coral Reef Watch. This is what we use, NOAA Coral Reef, not Reef. A little bit issue of pronunciation, but whatever, you get what I mean. Generally, it updates, it usually updates a day behind, but it does update every single day. So generally, nothing much of a change, or nothing really much in terms of, what am I trying to say? It does update a day behind, but it does update every single day. So I guess trading a negative for a positive, but still nothing really changes much within a day. So we can kind of not worry about that. But still, looking at the Atlantic, very warm, and we'll actually go over sea surface temperature anomalies specifically in the MDR very soon, very shortly, just in a few seconds. Just want to go over everything else. Pacific also still warming. Nino 3.4 region staying warm, and you can see developing El Nino. And actually, I'm going to talk about this in a second. Notice how the northern Pacific has begun warming too, as well. Notice over the last few weeks we've really been seeing a very strong negative PDO, or as I like to call it, very strong cold signature in the northern Pacific. That is really beginning to fade away now, and people are talking about it as potential correlation to ENSO. So this is very interesting as well, though it's still cold off the Baja Peninsula. So we still have some progress to go in terms of the PDO kind of warming up, but did want to mention it. This is the 15-day change from the NOAA Coral Reef Watch. A little consistency. You don't want to use different methodologies for different graphs. Kind of want to stay consistent. And you do notice here the northern Pacific really warming up, especially over the last 2 weeks. Atlantic, the Canary Current, of course, since we've had a more positive North Atlantic oscillation as of recently, the Canary Current has cooled down, but the MDR does continue to warm up as well. We'll actually go over that in a little bit, but very interesting. The PDO kind of switching more positive, or at least in the last few weeks. So maybe if we're coming to the terms of development of this El Nino, kind of a complicated situation between the PDO and the ENSO, though it is a little more easier once you understand it. But generally, the flip to this warmer look in the northern Pacific maybe could help the development of this El Nino a little bit more, or could help at least with atmospheric reflection in this El Nino. We'll have to see, but generally interesting that is occurring. But of course, as of right now, we're still looking at Nino 3.4, which is right around 0.5 degrees Celsius. So we're still really right at the threshold right now for El Nino. Not anywhere too significant. Kind of been capping off a little bit over the last few weeks. So that is over the last few days, not last few weeks, because if we compare that to the last 2 weeks since early May, we've really been seeing a steady increase. And you want to go back even further to early April. There too, a lot of progress has been made with the development of this El Nino. So El Nino, once again, reinforcing the idea that it's definitely coming, but we'll have to see, especially with for instance, the warming of the northern Pacific that I just mentioned to you, how that affects the development of this El Nino overall. Really quickly though, Atlantic MDR, as I did mention, the MDR has continued to warm over the last few days, and remember how we were in late April, early May. We were at this really warm period at basically 0.8 Celsius right here on the graph, almost well above normal completely in the MDR, and we kind of saw a little bit of a break for a few days since trades did pick back up. Now we're seeing warming continue, and we're almost there, almost where we were in late April, and we're now there almost closer to June instead of closer to April now. So we're definitely making progress in the MDR. The MDR is still remaining very warm. It's been, once again, warm for the whole entire spring so far. So once again, another piece of the puzzle that we have to take into consideration for sure. The SOI, though, definitely something that, as I did mention before, is helping with this El Nino. And notice how the SOI has been tanking over the last few weeks. We're now at 7 points below the neutral line for the SOI. So negative 7 points is where we're now at with the 30-day average. Very much indicative that, at least as of recently, the atmosphere has been more or less responding to the development of this El Nino. How long this does last for, we'll need to see. Maybe we'll see in the next few days another spike in the SOI. We'll see, but I did actually notice, very interesting, I think it's been basically the last 12 or 13 days since May 9th. Notice how we've been seeing consistent and almost consistent every single day daily contribution values to the SOI below 10 points, below negative 10 points. So that does definitely go to show that we're seeing a definite increase in response to the development of this El Nino, at least over the last few days or the last few weeks. But of course, the question is, how long does this last? The 9-day average, though, of course, right now, if we want to take a look at longer terms, that is still yet to reach -7. But once it does, that'll definitely show us that we're definitely solidly beginning to respond to El Nino, like all the forecasts have been showing. But I did mention, though, how long does this SOI period last? Because one thing you've been noticing, especially with the huge spike in the SOI, or how do I say, a huge crash in the SOI as of the last 2 weeks, notice how we've been seeing a lot of these westerly winds. Roughly in the Pacific, and I think last time that I showed this map, I'd gone over how to view this. Basically, what we're looking here in this part of the graph is the whole globe right around the equator, as mentioned by the coordinates we have here, 5 south to 5 north. So basically, this is the equatorial view of the whole entire globe along the equator of the zonal wind anomalies, which is what I have here. And generally, rule of thumb, on this side of the graph, yellows, reds, and a bunch of these pink colors, that represents westerly winds, anomalous westerly winds, so winds blowing out of the west, blowing from west to east. And that usually helps with the warming of the ocean, the warming of waters, downwelling. And these blues and these purples are usually rule of thumb for easterly winds, trade winds, blowing out of the east to west, helping with upwelling and cooling of the water. And notice where we're going in the next few weeks in the central and eastern Pacific. In the next few days, I should say, closer towards early June, we're looking at potentially a pretty strong trade wind burst, and this has been modeled for at least a few weeks now, I believe, closer towards mid to late May, some sort of easterly wind burst taking place in the Pacific. Some models have some different things, but at least from the GFS, they've been consistently showing this type of idea, sort of a strong easterly wind burst in the Pacific. So we'll have to see how the SOI kind of relates to this. Maybe the SOI does kind of go up for a few weeks. We'll have to see. But definitely something interesting I'll be watching for sure. Was going to pull up the model for how it looks like for the next few weeks, but generally it kind of looks the same. Not much going on except maybe this area that we have in the Atlantic really quickly. Hold on. I'm going to pull it back to the NHC. But generally this area we have here kind of develops, kind of doesn't, but really nothing of concern of that. And after that, nothing else going on. So decided to go over what's going on in the United States really quickly. Also nothing much. We're moving away from severe weather season, so not much severe weather to be concerned of, but we are starting to move towards summer, so we're going to see a lot more heat and humidity watches and warnings, especially across the south when it comes to heat indices and that type of stuff. Start to expect a lot more of that soon. And actually, since we're on the topic of severe weather, let's see what's going on right now. Slight risk, and very interestingly enough, speaking of summer, slight risk beginning to put a more elevated chance for severe weather beginning to pop up for the northern portions of the United States. And that is one thing that is typically seen during the summer, increased or elevated risks for severe weather across the northern plains and the northern tier of the United States. That's for today. Tomorrow returns to Texas, tornado risk there, and wind and hail as well. And then day 3, we have generally more moderate thunderstorm risk and not much in the way of severe weather. So moving away from spring and more into a summer pattern. And of course, with that comes hurricane season, and we'll see once again what happens. Watching this El Nino, especially this warm MDR, very closely. Other than that, besides this area of interest, maybe it tries to do something really quickly, maybe not. We'll have to see. But whatever happens after that, nothing else of concern in the Atlantic or the Eastern Pacific over the next week or so. And yeah, we're still only in May, so we still have a lot of time for things to change and, to ebb and, to flow. As they always say, things, change over a period of time. So we'll see how that happens. We'll see if there's any change with our global, long-standing factors like our climate factors, or I was looking for the word intraseasonal, I guess. We'll see if anything changes with that. But other than that, nothing much of concern for right now. And we'll see what happens. We'll see where this hurricane season definitely takes us. It'll be interesting to watch and see where we do end up this season. But with that being said, that does wrap up today's discussion. Have a great rest of your weekend. And I'll start posting, of course, next week. I'll try to post more throughout the week next week. Of course, monitoring what happens with this AOI and actually maybe posting to later today, or, whenever something interesting does pop up, even with this AOI, let's say chances increase, maybe I'll post something about that. Depends. But wrapping up for today, going to get out of here, going to stop talking and leave you to the rest of your day. Enjoy it, and we'll see you again very soon.